Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Kristin Hanczor, and I'm the Senior Partnership Manager here at the Green Sports Alliance. We first want to thank everyone for joining, and we hope that you all are staying safe and healthy during these crazy times. Today, we will be talking about the business case for more renewable energy, and we have a great panel here of experts in business and sports spaces to talk through some of the work that they're doing. We also want to thank L&S Captioning for providing captioning for today's session, and there's more information on that in the chat box on the right hand of your screen. You should be seeing the speakers' videos and the slide deck, and you can toggle between each to make them larger or smaller as you want. And I'm just going to give a couple of housekeeping items before we get started on the discussion. First, just to, let me just go back here. First, just to let everyone know that the webinar recording and the slides will be emailed around to all the attendees following the session. We have created a YouTube page which has our recent webinars on them, so you can also check that out for any recent discussions you might be interested in. And if you have any questions about accessing either of these items, you can just email us here at info@greensportsalliance.org. And then also regarding our summit, which was actually supposed to happen last week, but of course has been postponed due to everything going on, we will be making an announcement regarding our 2020 summit within the next week. So keep an eye out for that on our newsletter and our website, and you can always contact myself or someone on our team if you have any questions regarding that. All right, so we are going to kick off. As I mentioned, we have a really great panel today. The way the session is going to work is each of our speakers is going to give a 4 to 5 minute intro of who they are, what their organization is doing on this topic, and then we will have a Q&A section at the end. So if you see on your chat box, there is an area for people to put in questions. Feel free to go ahead at any point during the session and put in some questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. So Josh Kaplan, he's the Manager of Education and Engagement at the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance, also known as REBA. He's going to give a background on the state of the current renewables market and discuss a few of the different types of renewable energy deals that could potentially be an option for your organization. So Josh, thanks for kicking things off today.
Thank you, Kristin, and thanks everybody for joining us today. My name is Josh Kaplan, and I'm with the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance, as Kristin said. And we are a membership association of large energy purchasers, as well as energy providers and other service providers that really span across the energy marketplace with the goal of unlocking a clean, prosperous, and zero carbon energy future for everyone. So let's get started. Can we get to the next slide, Kristin? Wonderful. And as we kick off, I really want to impart kind of 3 messages over the next few slides. The first is that, as many folks on this call know, sustainability is an established business strategy. It spans industries and sectors, and renewable energy can be an important part of that strategy. Next, that there are many different opportunities for procuring renewable energy, as well as measuring the impacts that it can have on your stakeholders and communities. And finally, for both new and experienced buyers, building your internal support can be just as important as seeking all of the external options, some of which we'll talk about in the next few minutes. So first off, I want to apologize. There's a lot more text on these slides that I'm actually going to read, but as Kristin said, they will be provided later if you'd like to go back over them. But just to give you a sense of who we are, more so, we are a group of more than 200 businesses, universities, and municipalities, and we're all working together toward the goal of putting 60 gigawatts of new renewable energy on the grid by 2025. But really, if all of the commitments that these organizations have set by 2030 are met, we'll almost double that goal. So that's really significant. And to do this, we do everything from providing transactional education, supporting the policy and advocacy work that evolves markets, connects a global network of organizations and individuals, and drive innovation in purchasing models. And these are some of the activities that we undertake to actually achieve this goal. So next slide, please. So you can see on this slide, renewable energy is really starting to go mainstream. The logos you see here are companies that have signed on to the RE100 commitment, or a commitment to use 100% renewable energy in their operations. More than 240 companies have signed on, so not all of those logos are represented here. But this is just one measure of really what this action is starting to look like. More than 895 companies are now taking science-based climate action through the Science-Based Targets Initiative. Nearly 400 of those have set a confirmed science-based target, so their decarbonization commitments are aligned with a pathway specific to their industry sector that gets us below a 2-degree centigrade temperature change. 78 companies have signed on to our Corporate Renewable Energy Buyers Principles, which is an initiative of REBA, and 94 companies, and actually that number is a little higher now. I love that my numbers are already out of date by the time I go do a presentation, have signed large-scale renewable energy deals in the US. And you'll probably notice I'm saying companies. These numbers specifically are for private corporations that have done deals. We are starting to track more what's happening for cities and universities and other types of large energy purchasers as that market continues to evolve. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So as we're tracking these announced deals, what you see here is the growth in corporate procurement. So this is contracted renewable energy from corporate buyers from 2014 until April 27th of this year, measured in gigawatts of capacity. So really the big takeaway here is that renewable energy procurement is growing very rapidly. 2019 was a banner year, and 2020 is already off to a great start. The 1.76 gigawatts you see here is already a little bit out of date, or 2 months out of date. And I want to say just yesterday, I saw a whole slew of announcements, including Best Buy, Dow, Wells Fargo, Intuit, and Brown University have all made renewable energy procurements that were just announced in the last few days. So we are seeing tremendous growth and activity happening. And I'll just give a shout out to, this is tracking corporate procurement, but if you are not from a corporate organization, the Cities Renewables Accelerator, which is a program of the Rocky Mountain Institute and the World Resource Institute, is a great resource for cities. And we are actually developing several new offerings specifically for universities later this summer. So if you're interested in participating in those, please reach out and we'd be happy to work with you. So next slide, please. And going along with the growth in renewable energy procurement is the entrance of new buyers to the marketplace. So what's really important is it's not just the same organizations buying more and more renewable energy. And what's really notable is we're starting to see many more small and medium-sized organizations entering the market. And by this, we're not just talking about number of employees or by revenue. Very large organizations can have relatively small electricity demand. So through new procurement methods, whether that is aggregating several different buyers on a particular product or creating more bespoke opportunities to work with utilities, there are a lot of ways now that smaller buyers can get smaller amounts of renewable energy very cost effectively and in ways that better manage many of the risks associated with those procurements. So it's not just the Googles or the University of California that's buying renewable energy anymore, although those organizations are really already leading the way toward what the next generation of renewable energy procurement. So lots of exciting things happening. Next slide, please. This is just to highlight renewable energy procurement is also happening nationally. And I normally have a graphic that'll actually show what this map looked like in 2014. And it was very, very bare. It was just a handful of states. And now we can see renewable energy is being purchased and projects are happening, whether that's wind or solar or another technology across the country. And not everybody buys renewable energy in the same geographic location where their facilities are located. Many do, but there are many different ways to purchase renewable energy, again, that have different kinds of impacts that you may be looking to have. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of kind of the process that many organizations go through to get to this point. First the step is transparency. Organizations, they can't manage what they can't measure, so accounting for carbon footprint, mapping their energy consumption. Once you know that, you can set commitments and pledge energy goals to procure renewable energy or to reduce carbon emissions. And finally, once you know what your footprint is and you've made a commitment, you can take action. And hopefully once you have the buy-in of your internal stakeholders. And there's a feedback loop here that then allows you to do project after project. And that's starting to be what we're seeing with a lot of organizations. So that's just kind of a rough outline of the overall process and where to begin. And then my last slide, please. Very quickly before I hand it off to, this is a slide, please check this out later when you download the deck. But this is just on the left-hand side, you can see a list of many of the options that are available for procuring renewable energy. And they're kind of ordered from bottom to top by increasing complexity. So really beginning, something as simple as finding certified renewable energy certificates can be really important. That's one way to procure renewable energy. And as you look at ways that you want to have a certain kind of impact for your organization that matters to your stakeholders and your communities, there's lots of other options that are now available. With that, looking forward to answering more during the Q&A, but I'd like to turn it over now to Raj. And just a quick thank you also, Raj from Constellation. Constellation is one of our leadership circle members at REBA, so thank you for all of your support.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh, for kicking us off there. And yes, as you mentioned, Raj Bazaj will be next. He is the Executive Director of Customer Solutions at Constellation. And just a quick intro, Raj manages a business development team which helps a diverse group of companies implement solutions addressing major shifts in the energy market. So whether that be sustainability, demand reduction, and the overall cost optimization. And so Constellation has done several renewable energy projects in the sports space, and I will pass it on to Raj to provide more detail about the company's work.
Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. The exciting news here, and the first slide talks about the fact that we're seeing a lot of changes that are going on when it comes to sustainability. As you can see on the left, a lot of companies are moving towards setting goals and taking action when it comes to making changes to the environment in a positive way. Some of them, they're doing it because they really want to. Others are doing it because they need to. Some other reasons why they're being forced in some cases is companies like the Walmarts, Amazons of the world, through their supply chain initiatives, are really making sure that their vendors moving forward are paying a lot of attention to sustainability and meeting the requirements that they're putting in place. Employees as well as students and fans are also forcing the issue along with other stockholders. But one specific person that also has really made a big change here is Larry Fink. And if you have not read his letter that he put out to shareholders in January of this year, I would encourage you to do so. Larry Fink leads BlackRock, which is the largest investment firm in the world, $7 trillion under management. And he really is pushing very hard to invest only in companies that are very high in terms of what they're doing for sustainability. And I'll read a statement that he made in the letter, which I thought was very important and shows the direction of where companies are going to be going moving forward. Climate change is a major economic issue affecting housing prices, insurance markets, productivity, food costs, and more. It is a smart business decision. So that really says a lot about what companies and investors are going to be doing when they're looking at who to put their money in with in the future. Next slide, please. One area that we're really seeing changes occurring over the last few years, primarily driven by sustainability, is a convergence in terms of the decision making that is going on when we talk about how people are making their energy decisions. Before it was very simple. Generally, there was an RFP or a direct relationship between a supplier and college, university, or some entity. And the buyer looked at the prices and the product and made a decision. But now, along with that, they're also having to pay a lot of attention to what is being done with energy efficiency, sustainability in terms of what the overall objectives are, and then how is data analytics being implemented to understand the data, and not only understand the data but also extrapolate the data to see how they can implement new and even more important changes in future years. So the convergence is really driving to what we're calling an integrated energy strategy, where all these pieces have to be looked at together to really drive a very effective strategy. Next slide, please. One of the other key pieces to putting a strategy together is to really think about strategy in the context of what you would do if you were building your own house. There are major themes and items that need to be checked off to make sure that what you're putting together is robust and can really be something that you feel good about for many, many years. And it all starts with education, making sure that you understand what you're trying to do, what is your carbon footprint coming out the gate, so you have a baseline to compare against, and then what other ways you're going to use moving forward to quantify changes as they happen. The second piece is the impact, and here what we're talking about is how can you put a plan in place that really is comprehensive enough where it's very clear and visible what the different steps are and what's the impact of each of those steps on your carbon reductions and other goals that you may have in place. And then the third piece, which we feel is equally critical, is marketing. How are you communicating in terms of the progress you're making? How are you publishing your data through companies that a lot of the nonprofit companies, to make sure that you are being looked at and compared against your peers effectively and without any bias. And what I feel is also equally important is the communication to the students, fans, other stakeholders, as well as your community, so everyone can be excited about what you're doing and they can see the progress that you're making. Next slide, please. A lot of times when we're starting discussions with someone who is fairly new to sustainability, they really feel like they're left behind and now they have to scramble and try to get to what Google and Microsoft and others are doing. And that's absolutely not true. I mean, what we see is that, yeah, there are companies that are very, very much down the line of sustainability. They're on the far right, as you can see on this graphic, reached carbon neutral status and really know what they're doing. But then there's a majority of companies and entities that are in the first three circles here, where they're learning about sustainability and they're trying to come up with the really what we tell everybody is no need to panic. There are some simple steps that you can put in place to get the ball rolling, so to speak, and then just build on it slowly and get to the point that you need to get to by the defined time frame. So it really, there's customization that's needed to hit your goal. There's work that needs to be done, but it really isn't difficult or impossible to do what you need to do in the next 5 to 10 year period, which most companies are trying to do. Next slide, please. There are a lot of other factors that come into play when you're thinking about your strategy when it comes to renewables and sustainability. A couple I want to point out here. One was technology, and technology is just changing very, very quickly. I mean, when we look at where things are going, it's almost like a hockey stick. And at Constellation, we have two different groups. One is our partnership team, and one is actually an embedded venture capital fund that we have where we invest in new companies and technologies. And the reason for doing that is, if we're going to a customer and talking about what they need to do over the next 5 or 10 year period, that's great, it makes sense, but the target is moving and shifting all the time. So it's really important to be on top of what is changing and then bring that new technology to our customers so that nothing is static and it's evolving and they're up to they're updated in terms of what they need to do and they can modify their plans accordingly, because that's what really makes sure that they are taking advantage of the technology to help them maybe even accelerate what they're trying to do, but also save them money in a lot of cases and reduce their overall spend. And the second piece I wanted to talk about here is funding. And there are a lot of different sources of funding that are evolving along with the industry. And when it comes to on and off book type funding, what we do is try to help our customers so they can think about the finances as they're building out their plan and make sure that that's in line with where they're trying to go. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, and just the 3 simple things to consider if you're at the beginning stages. One is, if you know that you're going to be doing a behind the meter type project and you have the funds and the ability to install solar, that's phenomenal. But other than that, there are carbon-free sources of energy. Constellation, for one, with our nuclear fleet, can provide that. There also are opportunities to take an interim step with RECs, where you're offsetting your brown power, and many companies go that route to get started. And then finally, if you really know what you want to do and you would like to really get started by using new local renewable energy, there are ways to do that as well, where you can point to the actual place from where the energy is coming and being delivered to you. And a lot of colleges and universities want to do that. And we've also done that with many of the professional sports organizations as well. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Kristin.
Thank you, Raj. And we will now move it over to Adam Shalapin, who is the Global Sustainability Manager at Ball Corporation. Adam partners with stakeholders across Ball's value chain to enhance sustainability credentials of the aluminum beverage can and to drive long-term value creation. He's currently implementing Ball's global renewable energy strategy and how this can play into supply chains for the sports venues that actually use their products. So I'll let him explain that. Adam, over to you.
Thanks, Kristin. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Ball, Ball is the largest manufacturer of aluminum beverage packaging in the world. We make about 100 billion cans a year around the globe, and we actually recently released an all-aluminum stadium cup that was featured at the Super Bowl and is actively being used at the Pepsi Center in Denver and the University of Colorado Buffalo's facilities. You're probably familiar with some of our biggest customers like AB InBev, Coca-Cola, Molson Coors, and Pepsi, and many of our packages are probably, if not hopefully, in your facilities. And although beverage packaging is our largest business, we also manufacture aluminum aerosol packaging and have an aerospace business that provides technological solutions for commercial and governmental customers. We're headquartered in Colorado and employ about 18,000 people around the globe with operations in North America, South America, Europe, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. Next slide, please, Kristin. Now, there are certainly a lot of parallels between corporates and sports organizations because at the end of the day, we're both businesses. But I thought I would quickly share what Ball's reasons were for beginning to purchase renewable energy. I'm sure many of these will look familiar to your organizations as well, and this kind of builds off what Raj was just talking about. Sustainability is really high on the agenda for Ball, and we see a robust sustainability program as a key organic growth driver for the company, particularly in our beverage business, as the focus on packaging sustainability and particularly plastic packaging has really increased. And a cornerstone of that strategy is achieving aggressive sustainability targets, like our recently announced science-based greenhouse gas reduction target, which I'll talk more about in a second. And renewable energy not only allows us to reduce our operational footprint, but it also translates into our life cycle carbon footprint of our beverage packaging and can make it more competitive in the marketplace. By becoming a leader in renewable energy, we can enhance the reputation of our organization, not only in the eyes of our customers by aligning with their targets and their customers' targets, but also in the eyes of prospective employees. You know, it's often said that we're going through a purpose revolution in which people want to be a part of organizations that have a broader purpose in this world than just serving shareholders, and they want to be a part of organizations that align with their values. And certainly if that applies to a professional sports organization or a college in terms of talent attraction. And to some extent, renewable energy can help us reduce regulatory exposure and hedge energy prices, depending on what type of structure we move forward with. Next slide, please. As I alluded to recently in April, we announced our revised science-based target to reduce our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions from our direct operations by 55% by 2030 compared to a 2015 baseline. And we announced this in a time in which we're experiencing some pretty unprecedented growth, which makes it even more exciting. So when we started developing this target, we knew that renewable energy was going to be key to achieving this target by 2030. And so we developed an internal program in 2018 to begin a renewable energy journey. Next slide, please. And in April of 2019, we announced the signing of 2 virtual power purchase agreements, 1 wind and 1 solar, for 388 megawatts of new renewable energy. The 2 projects are estimated to produce approximately 1.2 million megawatt hours of energy per year. And these agreements will allow the company to address 100% of the North American electricity load utilized in our corporate packaging and aerospace operations by the end of 2021. As Josh mentioned, there are many ways to procure renewable energy, but decided to purchase through the VPPA model to make a big impact quickly. And these agreements actually put Ball in the top 10 of corporate renewable energy purchasers in 2019, which was very exciting and also shows that by building the right business case, you can take your program from essentially nothing to substantial in a pretty short period of time, as Raj mentioned. Fairly soon after we signed these agreements, we decided to begin exploring opportunities in Europe, and we've recently signed a PPA for 42 megawatts of new wind energy in Spain, and have another project on the finish line that we'll hopefully have signed soon. Next slide, please. And since we're talking about the business case for sustainability, it's important to reiterate that renewable energy is a critical part of a broader sustainability and business strategy for Ball. And that's important to define because your organization will face hurdles in purchasing renewable energy, and you will need to come back to this strategy and this mission statement to reflect on when you're making those difficult decisions. It can serve as a really great North Star to be able to come back to. And for us, that strategy includes creating the aluminum cans and cups of the future, ensuring that we're increasing our recycled content, manufacturing with renewable energy, and increasing recycling rates of our infinitely recyclable aluminum cans and cups. So as a sports organization, your renewable energy strategy doesn't have to stop within your organizations, and it can certainly stretch to who your suppliers are that you're working with and what types of products that you're bringing into your facility. And so if you're interested in learning more about Ball and our products after this webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out. Ball is certainly interested in being your sustainability partner. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Adam. And yes, if you haven't heard about the Ball Cups at the most recent Super Bowl, definitely check it out. It's a quick Google search. It got a lot of really great press, so we're really happy to partner with you guys on that. So now we'll move to 2 representatives from universities to talk a little bit about what they have been doing. So first we have Paul Kempf, who's the Assistant VP of Utilities and Maintenance at Notre Dame. So Paul's 2 departments are responsible for the operation of the campus's combined heat and power plant, the distribution of all of the centrally powered utilities, and the maintenance of the over 11 million square feet of campus facilities, which you can see behind him on that lovely campus map. So Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Kristin. Good afternoon, everybody. Just a little background on Notre Dame and what we've been working on. And our focus has essentially been to reduce our carbon footprint. And we take a lot of different paths to that. Renewable energy certainly is one of them. And we look at it just from our energy history that we've always had a diversified energy portfolio on campus. And much like a good diversified financial portfolio or a good team, it takes a lot of good players and diversification to build a winning combination. So if you go to the next slide, Kristin. So some of the things that are key, and there's a much longer list than this on our team, is energy conservation, which we've been working really hard at since probably 2008. From 2015 to 2019, we converted from essentially a baseload coal operation to natural gas, which supplies the fossil fuels we do use today. We implement a combined heat and power plant, which uses cogeneration. That's the generation of electricity while you're using the steam for other things like heating your buildings, or in our case, also driving other equipment to produce cooling, and then combined cycle operations with combustion turbines. And when we eliminated coal as sort of the third leg of our fossil fuels energy stool, which went along with gas and oil, we turned to renewable energy and what we call recoverable energy, which I'll talk about in a minute, as the replacement for that third leg that was a reliable source and also gave us some diversity. So next slide, Kristin. This is just an overhead view of South Bend. If any of you have been here, Notre Dame is adjacent to South Bend, Indiana. It's named for the southernmost bend in the St. Joseph River, and reviewed the city's history back in the early 1800s. The citizens came together to build a dam, and one of our rather unique projects is to build a hydroelectric plant. Obviously not a lot of those being built, but this dam existed, had an exemption from FERC for a low head hydro. And what you're seeing here is the river basically in the middle, and there was an east and a west race. And this is sort of the third coming of hydropower to South Bend. It was water powered industry back in the 1840s through 1900, and then a turbine plant electrification around 1900 that operated for about 50 years. And now we're coming back with this third view of this. Next slide, please. This is just a view of the modern, within the last couple of days, of the construction of the turbine facility, which will go around an existing fish ladder. And the next slide will give you a few more shots of construction underway. Some of it's built with box culverts, precast concrete structures is what those are, some cast in place. And we're building a 2.5 megawatt hydro that'll offset almost 10,000 tons of carbon emissions a year. And the installation is 10 small turbines, and we're directly connecting this. It's about 2 miles from our campus. So we're building an underground transmission line in partnership with our local utility, who's also running a line in a similar path. So it will be a physical asset directly connected to us to operate as part of our system. Next slide. One of the other things we focused on in recent years is recoverable energy, as I mentioned earlier, and for us, that's doing things like geothermal. So we're using our high efficiency gas turbines to produce electricity on campus. We're buying electricity from the grid. Our public utility is about half nuclear, so they're fairly carbon free. They're doing lots of other renewable projects. We benefit from our cogeneration, but we've built 3 separate geothermal projects that eventually will be built into a larger grid of a hot water distribution and chilled water distribution system that we already have to serve campus. And you can see here a fairly significant carbon reduction available to us from these 3 projects on campus. Next slide. We've also done some work with our local utility, who approached us with an interest of building a solar array in our county. They had heard of sort of our initial plans that we like to do projects that we were actually physically offsetting our own carbon. This is our first effort to go out and actually do a project that we aren't directly reducing our carbon, but feeling that this project being very close to us has a nice connection for us, and certainly will be visible to people in the area. The site that they found is on the Indiana Toll Road. We'll have lots of signage and visibility. And we've taken a 40% stake in this. The intent is they're building a larger array to drive more involvement from the community, other companies that might be interested, and also to help economic development in our area as well. And the site's built in a way that they could double the size of their array, and we may take a future option as well. Next slide, please. So just to give you a sense of what we've done over 10 or 12 years, we've reduced our energy footprint about 25%. And obviously this is on a per square foot basis. We do nothing but LEED silver minimum buildings on campus, and we've done a lot of the conservation projects in the older buildings, made a significant reduction here in energy. And the next slide, if you would switch to it, gives you a sense of what our aspirations were. So this is a graph that we started back in probably 2010, where we aspired to reduce our carbon emissions by 50% on a square foot basis by 2030 and 83% by 2050. The green area is what our aspiration was. The blue is what we've actually done. We've essentially achieved our 2030 goal already, and we're actually reconsidering our goals and restructuring to see what we can do further going forward. And that's it. Back to you, Kristin.
All right, thanks, Paul, and congratulations for being on track to meet and achieve that goal. And I think it's helpful to see the process that you guys have gone through and having some questions come in. So feel free to keep sending those questions in as we'll move to our last speaker, which is Ian McKeown. He's the Campus Sustainability Manager at Loyola Marymount University. And so Ian was actually the founding employee of the University of Miami Sustainability Program before moving to Loyola Marymount, where he developed Green LMU, and that's been recognized as one of the top higher education sustainability programs. So I'll let him talk a little bit about that program and how renewables fit into your strategy. Ian?
Great, thank you so much. Let's see if we can get our slides going. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Ian McKeown here, excited to be here and presenting with all our esteemed colleagues. So just a quick glance at what we do. We are a sustainability office on the campus, and we are based in facilities management. We have myself as the sustainability officer, and then we have a sustainability coordinator, Jessica Hernandez, who does a great job for our office. And then we also have, which is kind of the lifeblood of our program, is 20+ student employees at different times, running everything from media outreach to events to special projects as engineering students, such as energy reduction, energy contests in the housing areas, analysis of new renewable projects, and carbon footprint accounting, all the different things we do. We also have numerous partners and task forces across campus. That includes athletics, transportation, other things. And then kind of unique to our shop too is as a office, we actually run a campus bike shop and a campus garden. We kind of focus as an office on three things, which is sustainability strategy, carbon reduction strategy and tracking, education, and then also outreach. So we kind of have three different prongs of the things that we focus on. Next slide, please. And this is just an example of how important our team is. Not one individual can do this alone. You can see there on the right, it's a pretty cool example. Our logos have since changed as a university from a rebrand, but you can see the basketball team there getting involved, and they're all wearing green warm-up jerseys. And so they're on the bench, they're also wearing those jerseys, which is great because that was part of our green games. And then you can see below, we actually partner with athletics to use the Plug in America to do a large-scale ride and drive electric car event with education on electric cars and sustainable transit. And then obviously you can see our team up left having a good time there. So next slide, please. Yeah, so just a couple different accomplishments we have. We are part of the, we just accepted last year as a climate change observer for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. We've had a couple different great awards, including a sixth place in the nation for the Princeton Review's top green institutions. We placed first on the Green Day Basketball Challenge Award in 2018. And then a couple other firsts, like the Lonely Whale Partnership for Australis Ocean. We were the first university in the world to sign on with that agreement, and Recyclemania, and a couple other amazing things. So we, as a university, we do a lot of the competitive ranking, EPA Partnership for Green Power Purchasing, and generation on campus, and just as a list of some of the things we do. Next slide, please. So as a university, we have a commitment that predates my time at the university, but they did sign on to the TEWAR agreement, and we are saying that by 2050, we will be a carbon neutral campus. I believe we can get there a lot faster, and we're revising those goals, and COVID actually presents a really amazing opportunity to kind of analyze how we do business, take a step back, and say, how can we meet those goals sooner? But since our 2008 baseline, despite, you can see in this chart here, we've had a increase in square footage and in population. We've actually seen a 30% decrease overall in our carbon footprint, and that's strictly through energy savings and retrofits, as well as behavior change and engagement on campus, and then obviously the expansion of renewables. We have 5 currently LEED certified buildings, 2 gold, and a policy of all new construction must be silver or above. So next slide, please. So here's kind of the 4 main renewable installations on our campus. Here's just kind of a graph showing them. One is our brand new life science building, opened about 2 years ago. That's kind of a unique little cartoon graphic of it. Bottom left is Gerson Athletics Pavilion, where we have our basketball, volleyball, and other sports events. The bottom is a large school and a classroom administration building in the middle called University Hall, and then the right one is another administration building called Bondura. Next, please. So we're actually a leader in renewables. Back in 2003 and 2005, we had one of the largest solar installations of any university in the world. We've since been surpassed, so we're definitely looking and strategizing how to do more in the future and where we'll go in terms of new renewable opportunities. We added some more in 2016 on the life science building I was talking about. And you can see that we are pretty interesting in some of the panels that we have. They go all the way back to, like I said, 2003. We're looking at 75 watt panels. Obviously, you can get a much stronger panel for the same square footage nowadays. So we're looking at how to improve those programs, but obviously since the panels are still performing and we're keeping them maintained and on an operation and maintenance program, we're still getting the benefit of those. And some of these panels, for instance, like in U-Haul is saving us over $200,000 a year just by having that panel still running, and we're not paying anything for them. So except for operation and maintenance, which is a great solution. Another cool thing is we have a bunch of umbrellas on campus that were done around 2014. They're essentially independent charging stations with a battery that are meant for small electronics. And actually looking at COVID right now, we're strategizing because we don't have outlets everywhere. And as the university reopens, there's going to be a lot of things because we have beautiful California weather. How do we maintain social distance? How do we get people out and spaced out? The idea is, how are we analyzing? Maybe there's some more options for solar charging stations for small electronics, for laptops, things like that with batteries. There are small independent stations that can be distributed around campus that would have solar and battery. So it's just one idea we're kind of looking at with the COVID opportunity, or silver lining in COVID. Next slide, please. So again, this is the Gerson Athletic Center. That's the solar installation on the roof, which is a great example of how we're combining sports and sustainable energy generation. Next slide, please. And again, here is the inside of that arena, and you can see there it's a pretty, we have a pretty small school as a campus. We're a little over 7,000 students, but it provides an opportunity too for engagement since we are so nimble. Next slide, please. And we've done a lot of stuff with athletics. It's been a really driving force in our campus awareness of sustainability and engagement, and obviously it's why we're part of the Green Sports Alliance. We've done actually offsets we've done carbon neutral games where we purchased offsets for the games themselves to offset the delta of the energy we're using versus what that solar panel would have generated during the day. So for our green games, we make sure they're carbon neutral. We do zero waste targets. We have composting. We try to avoid single-use plastics at those games. And if there is anything, it's captured for recycling. So again, we're really trying to step up through the partnership with athletics to do this. A really cool thing we did last year was we did a Fill It Forward challenge with Hyundai and a couple other schools. We reached over 9,000 people through our campus community and beyond. We did over 20 events, which is $100,000 at least in value to the university. And we actually had 7,000 people engaged on our campus sign up on an app to forego single disposable plastic water bottles. And we had almost 60,000 unique refills of reusable bottles. So that was in a great program. And again, that was driven strictly through athletics and engagement there. Next slide, please. So another cool thing is, again, looking at the silver lining and opportunities during COVID. While people aren't on campus, we've been doing some retrofits. A great example is a tennis court lighting retrofit. You can see here we've moved from the old lights were a non-LED option. And so we opted to go with an LED option through a local utility program. And go next slide, please. And what we were able to do is to replace those old lamps that were almost 1,000 watts a lamp, 51 of them, with 240 watt LEDs. This was a program we leveraged through the utility. And so actually the installer and manufacturer of the lights was able to take the benefit that the city's offering and with no cost to us put these bulbs in. And we're going to be seeing a savings of north of $55,000 a year from that, and over 280,000 pounds of CO2 emission, which is equivalent to around 40 cars a year. So again, as we're targeting those kilowatt hours, as we're sitting back and saying, okay, what are we doing as a campus right now? This is an opportunity if people aren't here and aren't functioning on campus, what can we retrofit quickly? Again, it also provides a really nice solution for the team to have better light to practice in. I got some feedback that they really like the lights. Those are frequently used for practice for the tennis team. And then also for some neighbor issues, we're able to put some little like shading around the bulbs themselves so that the neighbors aren't seeing the lights from over the fence, which is great for community relations. And again, from the sustainability story. So again, opportunities during the COVID timeframe here that we're facing. Next slide, please. And yeah, so that's it. And thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Ian, and to all of our speakers. So I'll welcome all speakers to turn on their webcams so we can get started on our discussion. And speaking, I guess we'll first start on the theme of COVID-19 because we are obviously all living this, and we had a couple of questions come in. Ian, I guess we'll start with you first just because you've already mentioned a couple of pieces alluded to this, but how have you been handling the COVID-19 pandemic from the sense of looking at more renewable energy projects or sustainability projects? How has it made it more challenging? One person asked, and as you mentioned, it may actually open some opportunities. And then one specific question related to renewables is if your organization has been looking to sell back any of the energy that maybe it hasn't been using. And so I'll start with Ian, and then we'll open it up to the group.
Yeah, so from an opportunity standpoint, I would say the huge opportunity we've been seeing right now is that our office does a lot of programming and events and manages a lot of student work. And as we present in classes, and that's still been going on. However, since we're not physically on site and doing a lot of those day-to-day activities, it's presented really a strategy opportunity at the university. So we're taking this time to really do strong analysis on what we have, what we don't have, audits of buildings, audits of lights, because there aren't occupants there. So what we can really do is take this time to use to form strategy. And that's just been the biggest, most amazing part of this thing. And then also the idea, I'm sure everyone's on everyone's mind, is how can we leverage remote work in the future? We're doing some analysis on sustainability from perspective from the office and cost savings and saying, okay, if X% of the university is not here, what is the impact on transportation footprint? What is the impact on the office footprint of the energy we're using, the water we're using, and really just trying to make strategies around that and make recommendations to the university that works with their functioning. So I think we've been really trying to find the opportunity there. We actually haven't sold our power back at this point. Some things we're exploring though that are unique is we are Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and they have a very unique feed-in tariff program where we can actually, we don't get the carbon directly credits from it, but we can actually lease our roofs out to the utility to provide green power to the grid. So we're exploring some of those options and what that could look like. And then maybe there's some sort of community choice power that we could do through that, where we actually are getting back a sustainable energy source. So yeah, so we're kind of doing analysis on all that, and it's presenting that opportunity right now to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I know every day I feel like I read about a new college coming out with its announcement about what's going to happen this fall, and everyone's still figuring it out. But finding that silver lining, as you mentioned, and I think there are a lot of opportunities without students on campus, and maybe with having less energy use and figuring out where those pain points are and how to address them. I'm curious, Paul, at how you guys are managing at Notre Dame, if you're seeing opportunities as well, if things are more slowing down, and how you guys are handling everything.
Yeah, we took advantage of the fact that campus was empty and did a lot of conservation efforts. We hibernated a lot of the buildings. It's an interesting balance because you can't just can lay them up, but we're seeing a lot of our peers and other places that then find out, 2-3 months later, wow, I have to worry about things like water quality and did I grow mold and things like that. So we were very careful, but we did significant reductions in energy. We continued to flow water with our maintenance staff, flushing buildings. And so we saved a lot of money for the university during a time when there was like zero income. So that's helpful. It was also an opportunity for us with most of my staff were still coming to work to go out and do some retro commissioning of systems, so gain some efficiencies and things like that. And now we'll swing back the other way and see as people come back what that change will be. Obviously, campus may be operating longer hours. There's lots of people with opinions on what you should do for facilities on filtration and disinfection and all those other stuff. So we're constantly bombarded with everybody's latest new idea to try to respond to. And although that's very good, it's a little cumbersome for us right now to respond to all those because not everything is known about this disease right now and what makes sense. So we're trying to be prudent about where we spend money and what we do and how best to protect the students when they come back.
Yeah, completely. Everyone's figuring it out. And even us at the Green Sports Alliance, we're really trying to work with as many universities and teams as we can, because even professional level, every sport has their own plan. And there's a lot that we can learn as people are trying to work through this. So many more conversations on that to come. I guess I'll turn it over to see if Adam or Raj on the corporate perspective side, from how you guys are managing COVID, how this has played into your sustainability goals, either more generally or specifically to renewable energy, and how you guys have been managing that from your angle.
I guess
Adam, I think oh. Go ahead, Adam. I think you were just on mute, but if you can unmute yourself. I still can't hear you, at least. No, I cannot. Raj, how about you take it, and then we can see if we can get Adam back in audio.
Okay. Yeah, there are a couple of things there that I wanted to point out. One is that a lot of our customers that were doing some larger projects with respect to green energy have continued, and this includes colleges and universities. But one interesting thing that happened is once COVID hit and the schools had to disband very quickly and students had to go home, there were colleges that, small and mid-sized colleges in particular, where a lot of their bills were being put together and compiled and aggregated in general by students. And when they left, there was no way for them to really put these bills together, and that became a pretty significant issue for them. So that's where we were able to help, and they sent us the bills. We were able to upload them into a system, and something good has come out of that, because now that we have all that information, we've been using machine learning and artificial intelligence to understand the data and make recommendations of what they may be able to do to optimize their consumption and reduce their demand, and then also a look at what could be done, extrapolating the data to make things even better moving forward. So that's something new that has developed during the world we're in. And the second piece is some of our customers have taken this opportunity to really understand their carbon footprint. It's something that they've always wanted to do, never were able to get their arms around it, but this is a good time for them to get that in place and create that benchmark that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, definitely. To be able to find that time, finally, some organizations are somewhat lucky at the moment to have time to take a step back and relook at their strategies and how they're measuring. So definitely something that we encourage everyone to be doing. And Adam, did we get you back on audio? Want to give your perspective there? Yes.
I think I'm
okay.
back now. Yeah. I think COVID has certainly presented some challenges in the energy market, and hopefully I'm not repeating anything Raj just said. But certainly there can be issues with supply chain disruptions and issues potentially with financing of projects. But also I think that there are a lot of opportunities out there for buyers. While there have been buyers that are maybe a little bit more risk averse and not looking to dive into renewable energy purchasing in these times of uncertainty, I think for buyers that maybe have a little bit more of a risk appetite and can go back to that mission statement and realize that this is a part of their long-term strategy, there are probably some very attractive purchasing opportunities out there.
Yeah, and Josh, I don't know if you have anything to add just from your high-level perspective that you gave showing the last few years and how you guys are tracking this impact on COVID. I know you probably don't have all the answers, but how long is it going to last? How big of an impact is it having? Are renewables still going to survive all of this and come back stronger?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think anybody has the answers to any of those questions. But from where we are and talking to folks who are working across many different industries, and there are a variety of impacts that are being seen, and I think Adam actually really nailed it in that. I think many folks, companies who have set commitments around renewables and are actively purchasing them really see this as it's a journey. It's more of a long-term commitment. So, there are short-term impacts that some are seeing, but many buyers are really, digging in and actually finding this to be an opportunity to double down on their sustainability or energy or climate commitments. And I think, a lot of the analysis is coming out is saying that long-term, renewables could really come out stronger for this, even though we are, likely to be seeing some shorter-term impacts. So, the answer is really that, it really the impacts that we're seeing right now can really vary, but I think long-term outlook is still positive.
That's what we're hoping to, and just to continue the good fight and keep working together. And we're working to bring together as many voices as we can to help that. We don't want to see a pause, and we definitely don't want to see this have negative long-term impacts on the clean energy space. So just looking quickly at the time, I know we're running out a bit, so I'll jump to a final question, which would be great if everyone can give a piece of insight on. And maybe Josh, I'll start with you. Is a piece of advice from your perspective where you sit in your organization for a team or a league or a university that is listening today about either how they can get started on the clean energy journey if they haven't been able to get there yet, or one that may be looking to really double down, as you mentioned, and expand on some of the work they've been doing?
Absolutely. And really, one of the biggest pieces of advice is to, find an internal champion and somebody who can really work to unite, all the people within your organization, who need to be paying attention, whether that's your accounting, your finance team, your legal team. All these folks end up touching renewable energy projects, even if, the drive is really being led by your energy team or your sustainability team. So that's a really crucial piece. And overall, I think we're really excited to see, the impact that, the sports industry can really bring to all this as well. So I want to end with just a thank you to everybody for the work you're doing.
Thanks, Josh. And I'll give everyone else a chance to give some of their advice from your unique positioning. I guess I'll just pick on Paul next, if you'd like to share what you think.
Sure. No, I think Josh's comments were on point. I mean, for us, it takes time to get some momentum, and once you get momentum, you want to keep it going. It's important. You need the financial resources, you need the technical resources, you need the support of the people that you work with. And I think also, the big piece for us is to keep an open mind and be diverse. Again, we look at it as like, you just don't want to, you wouldn't take all your money and bury it in one thing. That's not a good idea. So nobody knows what comes. I also think it's important that you wait. 5 years ago, solar probably wasn't the top of the list. It's gained ground ahead of wind. So making that sort of balanced bet and also letting technology help us all over time, I think will be key. And
Ian, from your university perspective, a lot of unknown, but what's some advice of what's keeping you going?
Yeah, I think what's keeping me going is just interacting with a lot of different folks. I think a lot of people in the midst of the pandemic are questioning their impact on the world and our own mortality and the legacy we'll leave. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity for people to have this paradigm shift in society about saying, what is the impact we're leaving? How do we get here? How are we going to move forward? So I think framing it from that perspective is a really, really interesting opportunity, just like all the social movement we're having across the country and across the world. I think this is an opportunity for a drastic shift in our society. So I think I'm hopeful and to leverage it from that point.
Thanks for that. Raj, any final words from you? Oh, I think I can't hear you at least. I think you might be muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, what I was saying is that, talking with customers over the last couple of years about sustainability, one thing that I've learned is that it's extremely important to put some time up front. It's easy to say and get very passionate about, I want to get to zero carbon, but defining what that means, creating some objectives in terms of the time frame, and then bringing in all the stakeholders that you work with so that the plan is robust and it's accepted by everybody is critical. And then calculating that carbon footprint where you're at initially is equally important. If you don't do that up front, then I've seen things fall apart because folks don't agree later after a lot of money has been spent and ideas implemented, and it just creates a lot of problems and delays.
All right, and Adam, I'll give you the final word.
And I completely echo Josh's comments around an internal champion, but also build a team of internal champions. I know that something that was really helpful for us was getting the treasurer of the company very excited and on board as an executive sponsor. And it doesn't just have to be internal either. Surround yourself with great partners, whether it's REBA or a developer or a supplier who's gone through this before. People are willing to pay it forward with the information that they've gained in going through these processes and want to help. So continue to reach out to those partners.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today, for our speakers for providing your insight, and for our attendees for listening. Just a plug for the Green Sports Alliance, our newsletter will be coming out tomorrow, our June newsletter, and we will be having some deeper discussions on both the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on sports and also the racial and social justice movements that we're seeing, and talking about those as well. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions for me or for our speakers, and really hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.